To understand the ancient world, archaeologists often look at what its leaders left behind. In places like Egypt, a civilization's greatness was measured by the sheer size of the monuments built to glorify a single, absolute ruler. The city-states of Mesopotamia followed a similar blueprint. They used massive religious and political architecture to project the power of god-kings over their subjects. When we look back at the earliest human civilizations, three names usually dominate the map. Egypt and Mesopotamia are well known, but this map shows a third, often overlooked giant, the Indus Valley Civilization. Stretching across 1.25 million square kilometers of modern-day Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan, it had a territorial footprint larger than the other two combined. First grasped the scale of this territory, they assumed it must have been controlled by a ruthlessly autocratic empire. But when excavators began digging into sites like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa in the 1920s, the dust revealed a different reality. Pristine brick foundations emerged from the sand, outlining an engineered society. Instead of the chaotic sprawl typical of ancient settlements, archaeologists uncovered organized, grid-based streets. They found administrative and residential zones equipped to house tens of thousands of citizens in structured neighborhoods. Yet, as they cleared acres of city blocks, excavators realized something was missing. There were no palaces, no grand royal tombs, and no monuments built to honor a supreme leader. The landscape lacked royal architecture, containing instead thousands of uniform, engineered civilian homes. This discovery presented a new model of ancient human organization, a society coordinating complex urban infrastructure across thousands of miles without a central monarch to enforce it. The foundational feature of Harappan urbanism is its grid pattern. Main streets ran predominantly north-south and east-west, a choice that facilitated traffic flow and acted as a natural ventilation system in the summer heat. This organization extended to the building blocks of the city. The Harappans used aked bricks manufactured to a standardized geometric ratio. That uniformity allowed them to construct advanced civic infrastructure, connecting nearly every home to a sophisticated covered drainage system. While contemporary Egyptian society focused resources on royal death cults, the Harappans prioritized private wells, large community baths, and public hygiene. The city's blueprint indicates a planning authority focused on public utility and community welfare rather than royal glorification. Yet, digging through the ruins of its massive cities reveals a glaring absence. Archaeologists have found no grand palaces. There are no towering monumental temples. They haven't unearthed a single royal tomb, and there is zero evidence of a standing army. For decades, this lack of familiar ancient hierarchy confused historians. The prevailing assumption was that a society this sophisticated must have been seeded by migrating populations from the West, bringing advanced culture with them. But deeper excavations proved otherwise. At a site called Mergar, we can see a continuous evolution of farming communities dating back to 7,000 BCE, long before the first bricks of the major cities were laid. The definitive proof came in 2019 from a burial site in Rakhigarhi. Scientists managed to extract viable ancient DNA from the 4,000-year-old skeletal remains of a woman known as I6113. This data visualization charts her genetic markers against surrounding ancient populations. The results show zero genetic influence from steppe pastoralists or Anatolian farmers. Her ancestry was entirely indigenous to South Asia. This genetic profile proved the Harappan people did not inherit their civilization from outside conquerors. They built it natively, from the ground up. That leaves us with a compelling historical mystery. We must figure out how an indigenous population managed to build and maintain the most densely packed, highly organized urban centers of the ancient world, all without a trace of warfare or dictatorial kings. The answer begins around 2600 BCE, entering what is known as the mature Harappan phase. Instead of seeing organic, sprawling village growth, these ancient people imposed strict mathematical grids directly onto the landscape. To build on this scale, they mass-produced hundreds of thousands of uniform, fire-baked bricks. As you can see in these foundations, those bricks were laid out in precise right angles, forming standardized neighborhoods across multiple distinct cities. They engineered those neighborhoods with a relentless focus on public hygiene. This deep basin, known as the Great Bath, was fed by complex water supply networks and world-class wastewater drainage systems that ran beneath the streets. Every piece of this infrastructure was governed by a standardized binary system of weights and measures. From the dimensions of a single brick to the layout of a city block, the math remained consistent across 1 million square kilometers. That level of standardization was built for an economy of mass production. The brick ruins here belonged to a dedicated bead factory, part of an extensive industrial zone that fed complex merchant networks spanning the ancient world. When you find cross-city architectural uniformity, standardized weights, and advanced plumbing, rather than royal palaces, you are looking at the footprint of a highly efficient municipal government. This was a society organized around trade, hygiene, and civic order. That civic order extended to the individual human level. Looking at the artifacts left behind, we see a striking absence of extreme social hierarchy. Take this small steatite bust, often called the Priest King. With his half-closed meditative eyes and clover-patterned robe, early excavators assumed he was a supreme ruler. Today, archaeologists suspect he simply represents a local clan leader or ancestral figure. He only possessed the artistic skill for grand monuments, as shown by this bronze dancing girl. Cast using an advanced lost wax technique, her heavily bangled arm reflects a culturally confident, expressive society. Instead of monuments, their finest artistry went into commercial tools. These heavily decorated steatite seals feature a detailed rhinoceros carving and an intricate, still undeciphered pictographic script, used primarily for stamping trade goods and identifying property. This focus on commerce over conquest is echoed in their graves. Mortuary analysis at Lothal and Kalibangan reveals no hidden hoards of elite wealth. Skeletal remains show relatively equal health and nutrition across the entire population. When a society channels its competitive energy into long-distance trade, intricate craftsmanship, and public sanitation, it functions very differently than a traditional kingdom of subjects. Instead, it operates as a vast egalitarian cooperative. By 1900 BCE, this cooperative system began to fracture. Over the next few centuries, during the late Harappan phase, these thriving megacities were gradually and almost entirely abandoned. Early 20th century archaeologists like Mortimer Wheeler popularized the theory that violent Aryan invaders swept in and slaughtered the population. But the archaeological record shows no evidence of battles, massacres, or sudden destruction. Modern geoscience has identified the actual culprit. Around 4,000 years ago, the region experienced a massive long-term shift in monsoon rainfall patterns, starving the area of essential water. This map tracks the recession of monsoon rains. As precipitation shifted eastward, vital river systems dried to a trickle, fracturing the agricultural backbone. Switching to satellite topography, we can see the scars of those dry riverbeds etched into the earth. The Harappans had engineered a society perfectly adapted to control and exploit abundant water. Once that primary resource vanished, the highly centralized urban design became a fatal vulnerability. As the climate shifted, the Harappan people migrated eastward toward the Himalayan foothills and the Ganges Valley, following the rain. They left the sprawling, quiet ruins of their brick metropolises behind, transitioning from dense urban centers into a decentralized network of smaller farming villages. Though their cities emptied, their cultural imprint survived. The proto-yogic postures carved into their trade seals mirror practices alive today, and the specific block printing patterns found on their statues are still used by textile artisans in modern Sindh. But their legacy wasn't just cultural, even their biology endured. Genetic markers extracted from that ancient woman in Rakhigarhi have been traced through generations, remaining highly prevalent in modern South Asian populations. The Indus Valley legacy is one of successful adaptation. They traded their central cities for smaller farming villages, but their genetic and cultural signatures remain etched into the population of the modern Indian subcontinent. In 1925, archaeologist Kashinath Dixit was digging within the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro,
when he unearthed a 17.5-centimeter steatite bust. The sculpture depicts a bearded man wearing a cloak decorated with a trefoil pattern. His eyes are half closed, positioned as if focusing on the tip of his nose in a meditative state.
Years later, the prominent British archaeologist Sir Mortimer Wheeler reviewed this ancient artifact. Seeking the missing ruler that their historical models demanded, Western archaeologists gave the statue a definitive title, the Priest King. Wheeler and his contemporaries operated within a rigid framework, assuming that complex urbanization necessitated a Sumerian-style autocrat to mobilize a workforce. The title reveals the assumptions of 20th-century colonial academics, rather than the documented reality of the Bronze Age Indus Valley. Modern archaeology has largely discarded the autocratic theory. When we look at the broader material record, the evidence for a central king is absent. There is no evidence of standing armies, military weapons, or the kind of elite wealth hoarding typically associated with tyrannical regimes. Instead, artifacts like the dancing girl suggest a society comfortable with varied, possibly secular, elite roles. The Pashupati seal depicts a seated, horned figure surrounded by animals. It indicates that Harappan religion was based on decentralized animal iconography and yogic practices, rather than a top-down state cult. Under this new light, the priest-king bust takes on a different meaning. He might represent a revered ancestor, a deity, or a member of a merchant council. Harappan authority was apparently exercised through the bureaucratic management of resources, like granaries, standardized weights, and trade networks. The Harappans defined their legacy through the urban environment, prioritizing the layout of the city over individual statues or tombs. While variations in house sizes show that social classes existed, this hierarchy appears to have been functional and integrated. Many modern historians describe this system as a cooperative oligarchy, where a council of merchants and administrators maintained order through public infrastructure. The Indus Valley civilization provides evidence that human societies can achieve scale and harmony through civic organization, challenging the assumption that civilization requires an autocrat.